Naruto stared at the ceiling to his hotel room, clad in his armor and white and orange trench coat. He looked like he was paying attention to the detail of the room when he was actually in deep thought about the talks. Specifically about the Tsuchikage. The man had no respect for anybody who was younger than himself, and it had been for this reason that there had been no mention of a Yondaime Tsuchikage at all. His reputation of being Ryotenbin no Aniki meant that he was quick to switch sides from one another, and that made him a very dangerous man when picking as an ally, especially when it came to trusting him. He'll definitely try and gain something out of me, that's guaranteed, Naruto thought grimly with a frown. Kit, I don't like this just as much as you, but I wouldn't worry much about that senile old man. Remember, you won that bet fair and square. The cages cannot afford to lose the UWN, and so should give you Uzushi Ogakure as promised. Though it was already yours by birth, Kurama mentally added, trying reassure his partner so that he would stop worrying over things too much. By focusing too much on one thing, he would become oblivious to everything else, something that a leader mustn't fall into. I know, but still I can't help but feel a headache coming on soon. Naruto mentally replied to his tenant as he stood up and stretched his muscles, causing his joints to pop into place. He yawned as he walked over to his equipment laying nearby. Picking up his sidearms, which were in his holsters, he tied them around his hips securely to stop them from falling down. Next he placed his Colt M4A1 Sopmod on his back by the strap, his stun knife was on his lower back from his fights with Konoha 11, and his sword was attached to his left hip. Placing his right index and middle fingers to his right ear, Naruto activated his codec to get in contact with his wives and captains. Uzukage-sama, was the simultaneous replies from his generals and captains. Everyone meet me in front of the hotel at 1100 hours. That will be when we will go to our meeting with the cages, Naruto ordered as he heard numerous confirmations through his codec. When everyone had confirmed his orders, he took his fingers away from his codec and glanced at the clock opposite the bed. 9:30 a.m., it showed, meaning he had an hour and a half until he met up with the others of his group. I could use some breakfast, he thought absently as a particular ramen stand came to mind. Over the course of his banishment he had learned to not constantly eat the stuff, but he could have it as a treat since he was eating more healthily. So whilst he would eat normal food just as much as everyone else, he still loved to have ramen from time to time, and that time was now. Plus he would be able to tell Toichi and Ayame about his offer to move to the UWN in person, as it seemed more polite than sending a message. Shutting and locking the door to his room, he made his way towards Ichiraku ramen stand. Konoha streets. It would appear that nothing has changed since my banishment, Naruto thought as he knew the villagers were either glaring at him or whispering insults, thinking he couldn't hear them. Ka-chan, what's that armor that guy is wearing? Never you mind, Toshiro-kun. Just stay away from him, he'll only lead you to your death. Oh okay Ka-chan. Naruto sighed as he heard the small conversation between the mother and her son. Truth be told, he wanted nothing more than to go there, chew out the mother and tell the kid otherwise, but a couple of things stopped him. Firstly, he couldn't afford to cause any trouble at the moment, and secondly, despite his feelings, he didn't want to cause a rift between the mother and her son, especially since he mentally saw himself and Kushina in their places. Though he was pretty sure his Ka-chan wouldn't have been as cruel as this woman was if she was warning him about someone. Soon he saw the familiar stand that he had visited in his childhood and had a small flashback of the first time he came here with the Sandaime when he was about 6 years old. Pushing the flaps to allow him entry, he saw that the stand was mostly empty except for Toichi, who had his back to him as he tended to the food. He took a seat on one of the stools and looked to see that the stand hadn't changed at all since his banishment. What'll you have? Toichi said in a bored-toned voice, with his back still facing him. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the unusual behavior. As far as he knew, Toichi always greeted his customers with a cheery attitude, but now that he thinks about it, Toichi and his daughter could very well have been affected badly by his banishment, so it wasn't completely a surprise that Toichi wasn't very friendly. One miso ramen please, Naruto asked. Toichi froze for a moment before as he recognized that voice. Ever so slowly he turned around slowly to see Naruto sitting there with his arms crossed and with a smirk plastered on as he watched Toichi in amusement. And Naruto, Toichi stuttered as the blonde smirk widened slightly. Hey old man, how ya been? Naruto asked as the man looked close to tears. Toichi was indeed close to crying in joy at seeing his favorite customer. When the man and his daughter heard the news that Naruto was being banished, they immediately tried to visit him, but as they arrived at the prison they saw some of Naruto's comrades leaving with smiles or smirks that didn't please the pair. They were denied entrance, and when they asked for an explanation they were told that only shinobi could visit shinobi criminals. They knew the man was lying, but they couldn't force their way through, and they couldn't ask the Hokage as his banishment was scheduled for the same day. The time it would have taken to gain entrance would be too long from the constant blocks the civilians would try to put up. In the end, all they could do was watch in sadness as Naruto ran as fast as he could away from them until he was no longer visible to them, having ran too far for them to see them. Almost as soon as he was no longer visible, the villagers started to celebrate, glad that he was gone. From then on, both Toichi and Ayame were cold to anyone who badmouthed Naruto. There was even a case where someone insulted Naruto's parents, which resulted in Ayame discreetly putting laxatives in the person's food. The Konoha 11 were also treated coldly, even those who had nothing to do with Naruto's banishment. The reason being that even though they didn't treat him horribly while he was in prison, they did constantly get on his case for even the minor of things when he was with them in both the academy and when they were made genin. Naruto, my boy, how are you here though? I thought you weren't allowed back in Konoha. Not that I mind or anything, Toichi quickly added at the end in the hopes of not insulting the man. Naruto waved off the accidental insult. It was a legitimate question since he didn't know of his current status. No worries, old man, the reason I'm here is because the Shinobi Alliance can't handle one village and one criminal organization, so they decided to try and get my nation involved so that they survive this war that Akatsuki started, Naruto explained with extra emphasis on the "my" in his response. Toichi was stunned to say the least. He knew that the Shinobi Alliance was losing the war and that they were in meetings with United Whirlpool Nation's leader, but the emphasis on the "my" made it sound like, "You're the Uzukage, aren't you?" The nod in response confirmed it, as the two shared stories and Naruto had his ramen. Naruto told Toichi about how he untied the West to form the United Whirlpool Nation, and Toichi filled Naruto in on how his life was during Naruto's banishment. After an hour had passed, the two finally stopped, and Naruto thought it best he give Toichi his offer before he left to meet with the rest of his group outside the hotel. Say, old man, I was wondering if you considered moving to somewhere else. Toichi scratched his chin in thought as he mulled the idea over. If he was honest with himself, he did think about moving ever since Naruto was banished, but had decided against it because of the dangers of bandits, possibly ninja, and the trouble of setting up shop at their new location. I have considered it, but there would have been dangerous people out there that we could run into, as well as the problems we would face of getting started in selling that made it impossible for us to move, he replied. Well then, how about this? I will take care of everything that you would need to move to the UWN, and in return you give me a discount from time to time, Naruto offered as Toichi thought the offer over. After a couple of seconds, Toichi gave Naruto his reply. Okay Naruto, you got yourself a deal, and I will tell Ayame of this when she comes back from picking up some supplies. That reminds me, she really missed you as well, and I'm pretty sure that she would love to see you again after so long, Toichi said as Naruto nodded in return. Alright, I talk to her later on as my group and I will be going back to our headquarters after our meeting with the cages. Before then, pack all of the essentials that you need and head to the Hokage monument, where I will meet up with you there. After that we will send you to the UWN, where for the time being you will be living as guests at my home, then we will set you up with the resources you will need. I am pretty sure that business will be fruitful, considering you were some of the only people to treat me with kindness when I was in Konoha, Naruto informed the chef. He was glad that the man was coming back with him to the UWN. It was also easier that they were civilians, since the cages could not interfere with civilian affairs and the civilians could not hold them in Konoha unless they were being charged with a crime with valid evidence. It would seem that the civilians' efforts to be in control of Konoha by stating that civilians were under their complete control were actually working in his favor now. It was then that he noticed that it had been hours since Ayame had gone to get supplies for the ramen stand. What could be taking her so long? She wasn't the kind of person to allow anything to interrupt her when she was working. So that meant either she was having trouble with getting the supplies before she could leave. Or someone has stopped her mid-journey. Taking the necessary Ryo out to pay for the meal, he lay the money on table before addressing Toichi. I'll see you later, old man, and remember, only essentials. We can only take so much before it becomes a danger, Naruto reminded Toichi as the man nodded and waved him goodbye, to which he responded in turn with a smile. The Hueys did have a maximum weight load, and carrying 2 extra people and their luggage may weigh the helicopters too much. However, as soon as he had gone past the flaps, his expression turned cold as ran off towards the route that Ayame took when picking up supplies, hoping his fear was wrong. Minutes later, Ayame shouted as she was forced to sit down against the wall in an alleyway, her work clothes ripped to the point that it barely covered her body. She had numerous bruises, cuts and scratches inflicted on her from her attackers, who towered above her with looks of unrestrained lust. There were 3 of them altogether. They were all civilians, and despite that, Ayame was still outnumbered, and as she wasn't a ninja she couldn't fight them. It was then that the leader of them took a step towards her as the others held her down. "Relax, you'll love this, demon whore," the leader said as he pulled his pants and underwear off. "And no," Ayame begged through her split lip, as the leader ripped her panties away. She started to hyperventilate and started to slowly lose conscious. All of her time alive she had wished that Naruto would be the one to take her virginity, not some civilian pigs. "Shut up, bitch," the leader growled as he was about to penetrate the bound girl. Bang. Gaahhhhh, the leader yelled as he fell down on his back, clutching his crotch as blood flowed out at the speed of a waterfall. When the other thugs saw what had happened to their leader, they turned towards where they heard the sound come from and saw Naruto there, his killer mode on and his 5-7 in his outstretched right hand, which was smoking slightly from the discharge of the bullet. "It's the demon, run," one of the other thugs shouted as he and the other uninjured thug ran down the alleyway, away from Naruto as fast as they could in an effort to get away. Bang 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 bang. Both thugs fell to ground holding onto both of their kneecaps as the bullets shattered them from behind them, rendering them permanently crippled and in a lot of pain. Upon impact they all shouted in pain again, though Naruto ignored them and walked towards the barely conscious Ayame, turning his killer mode off in the process. When Ayame saw Naruto coming towards her, she firstly thought it was another rapist and started to tremble. However, when she recognized him she let out a small smile. "And Naruto," Ayame whispered in relief as her eyes rolled up and fainted. Sighing, Naruto took off his trench coat, crouched down and wrapped it around Ayame's form. When Ayame felt the coat around her, she instinctively pulled it tighter to her to keep her warm. Once she was comfortable, Naruto stood up straight and activated his codec. "Calling all call signs, change of plans. Captain Kyoto, take 2 guards and rendezvous with me at the hospital. Prepare for medical condition No. 0198721. 3 of the bodyguards will arrest the 3 wounded civilians at these coordinates, punches in his location, and take them to the Hokage's tower. All other captains and generals are to take the rest of the guards and proceed to the Hokage's tower as well, where Generals Yugito and Fu are to then call a meeting along with the other cages. Everyone else will continue with their previous orders." "Confirm." "Sir, yes sir," was the response. Taking his fingers off the communicative device, Naruto walked back to Ayame and picked her up bridal style. Looking over the thugs, he saw that they weren't going to be going anywhere, so decided not to restrain them as his soldiers should be arriving soon. Then he disappeared, leaving an afterimage as he made his way to Konoha's hospital. Konoha's hospital, minutes later. "We're here to look for Uzukage-sama. He told us that he brought a patient here for us to treat," Inoue said as she and her 2 bodyguards addressed the receptionist with blank expressions. The receptionist glared at them with hatred as she spoke back and barely contained venom. "The demon and the demon-loving whore are in room 201. Now get the hell a move on so that I can't deal with normal human patient requests," she sneered. If Inoue was offended, she didn't show it. Instead, she nodded back with a neutral expression to the receptionist and walked past her and made her way to the designated room, leaving the receptionist to wonder why they didn't retaliate to her insults. After walking for a few minutes, the group eventually made it to room 201 and proceeded to open the slide door. When she opened it, she saw Naruto standing at the end of the bed staring at the unconscious Ayame, who lay in the hospital bed. She was dressed in a hospital gown and was covered up to the neck by the bedsheets. "Uzukage-sama, is this the patient?" Inoue saluted her commanding officer along with her bodyguards following her. Naruto didn't even turn to look at the trio as he responded in a kind of trance-like tone. "At ease, and yes, this is the patient. At roughly 1030 hours, Ayame Ichiraku here was nearly raped by 3 civilians in an alleyway where they also inflicted wounds on her for resisting. She has received numerous cuts, scratches, bruises, and she is dehydrated from crying in the heat. They never got to actually do the deed, but I didn't want to take any chances. She also fainted at the end of the ordeal. Please do what you can for her and do not let anyone aside from our group, Tsunade or her father, into this room. Anybody who tries to force their way is considered an enemy and you have the right to use lethal force. Understood?" "Yes, Uzukage-sama," Inoue replied with conviction as Naruto nodded and vanished, with an afterimage being left for a few seconds before vanishing also. She knew that Naruto cared about the girl as he had mentioned her a few times as he told them about his past in Konoha when he met them, and that now he was barely containing his rage as he left. After she was sure that Naruto had left, she turned towards her 2 bodyguards. "You 2 guard the door," she ordered. "Yes, Captain Kyoto," they replied simultaneously as they walked outside the door to keep a lookout to make sure that nobody interrupted her unless it was urgent or if any of the previously mentioned people turned up and wanted to see the girl. Once they were gone, Inoue then turned back to look at the unconscious Ayame. All right, let's see what we can do here, she said rhetorically as she took out her medic kit and started to tend to the girl's afflictions. Hokage Tower, Council Chamber. The room was darkened with no windows and lights were used for lighting. In the center of the room was a large circle table that was able to accommodate the cages, Naruto's group and the council. That demon should be executed, one civilian council member shouted, with the others shouting in agreement. The shinobi council members all shook their heads in annoyance as they heard that demand for the who knows how long time. Along with them were the cages, who were talking amongst themselves, and Naruto's group were doing the same as the cages. A moment later they saw Naruto appear, scaring the shit out of both councils and the cages. Uzukage Dono, are we ready to start the negotiations? Tsunade asked, hoping to get them to begin talking. Nope, was Naruto's unexpected answer. In response, he was on the end of numerous outbursts from the civilians, shinobi and some of the cages. Why not? Demanded as he was about to use his Raiden no Yoroi on him. Seeing this, Naruto put his right hand up to signal for silence. A moment later everyone was quiet and were now listening intently to him for an explanation. What I mean is that there is one more thing that is needed to be discussed before we start the negotiations. This is because as I was making my way here after stopping for some breakfast, I came across the sight of one Ayame Ichiraku about to be raped by 3 Konoha civilians. In response, I incapacitated them and brought Miss Ichiraku to the hospital where she is now being treated by Captain Kyoto. Naruto ground out as the civilians were in uproar. Lies. Our Konoha villagers would never do such a thing, though her being associated with you is a good enough reason to do so, another civilian member shouted with nods of agreement from the other members. Oh really? Then how do you explain this? Naruto questioned as he activated the hologram projector that was hidden in his helmet. A small light shone from the helmet and showed the scene of the attempted rape to the audience against the bare wall. The cages, Naruto's group and the shinobi council members were disgusted at seeing the attempted rape, although the cages and shinobi were also taking note of Naruto's hologram projector. When Naruto came and dealt with the culprits, they winced slightly as they knew how much pain they were in. The civilians though were furious and were demanding that Naruto be punished for using excessive force or saying the proof wasn't good enough. Oh, I thought the punishment for rape was execution. And how can you sit there, see that crime as if you were there and then say no crime was committed? Naruto rebuked as the civilians went quiet for the moment. Tsunade, seeing this, stood up as it was her responsibility to give out punishments. Well, seeing as it is clear that those 3 civilians are guilty, they will be imprisoned for life and given a session with Ibiki. Normally they would be executed, but due to the fact that the deed wasn't actually done, I can't do that, so this is what they get instead. Tsunade said. The civilians were yelling again in protest, saying that they shouldn't be punished at all. Quiet, Tsunade shouted, using ki to shut them up. It was then the doors burst open and in flew the 3 mentioned civilians as they were thrown through the doors by 3 of Naruto's group bodyguards, hands cuffed behind their backs. As the 3 attempted to sit up, their arresters used the stock of their Colt M16A2 rifles to hit them in the back of the neck, causing them to fall flat on their stomachs. Prisoners escorted to location, sir, one of the soldiers reported as he and the 2 others saluted their commanding officer. At ease and thank you. Now continue with your original duty of defending the captains, Naruto said as they responded with a confirmation before marching to stand by the captains and other generals. Naruto then turned back to Tsunade and addressed her. Hokage Dono, personally I do not like your decision, but they fall under your jurisdiction, so I have no choice but to hand them over to you, he said with a slight frown since he was upset about the punishment. Tsunade summoned a few Anbu to take them to Ibiki, the criminals shouting in protest as they were roughly dragged out of the room and causing more pain in the areas from where they were shot. After they were gone, Tsunade thought it best that the negotiations began. Okay, if there are no more problems, can we begin these talks? Nodding back to her, Naruto strode over to his group and took a seat next to his wives. When it looked like everyone was ready, Mifune decided to begin. Okay, now that we are all here, this second meeting between the Shinobi Alliance and the United Whirlpool Nation. As before, I will act as mediator, you may begin, Mifune said as he took his seat again. First of all, I would like everyone here to hold up their side of the bargain and that Uzushiogakure is now under the permanent jurisdiction of the United Whirlpool Nation. Naruto began as many of those present hoped he had forgotten about that. The nation was rich in resources that made Hai no Kuni a very rich country, and the land was very good for strategic maneuverings. To give it away would be a very hard blow to the Shinobi Alliance, especially Konoha. Knowing that they had no right to retain Uzushiogakure as their own, Tsunade made the announcement. Very well, Uzushiogakure and all of its resources are hereby under the ownership of the U. I say no, Aniki interrupted Tsunade as many of the occupants of the room stared in shock at what the Tsuchikage was doing. Excuse me, Naruto said in a low tone as his eyes narrowed. You heard me, I will not give up a strategic point to some young idiot who leads a nation whose inhabitants cannot even use chakra, Aniki declared as everyone fell silent. The room had become so quiet that if a pin dropped it would be as loud as a kunai hitting the ground. Is that so, you senile old shit stain? Everyone, minus Naruto's group, mouths open in shock as they heard the insult pass through Naruto's lips with his hair covering his eyes. Sure, in the past cages would indirectly insult each other, but never did they actually openly say it. The effect was shown as the Tsuchikage turned red from anger and flew up so that he was average height. He then glared at the Uzukage with as much hate as he could. How dare you say such things, you ungrate. ... Click. The Tsuchikage's eyes widened in fright as he was now looking down the barrel of one of Naruto's 5.7s. Naruto's expression showed a scowl in place, directed at the man who was at the end of his firearm. Naruto was indeed angry. This man was about to back out of a deal that had already been made. Are you sure? If so, then I will happily give you another asshole with the help of my pistol here, through that skull of yours. Then if the others don't comply with the conditions of our bet, I will declare war on the Shinobi Alliance, and I am pretty sure that you don't need us as your enemy, especially since the reason you wanted an alliance with us in the first place was because you were already losing a war, Naruto growled as he applied pressure to Aniki's forehead with his 5.7. The other cages and ninja were about to intervene but stopped when they heard more clicking noises, this time coming from Naruto's group. Turning to look at them, they saw that each of the bodyguards had their Colt M16A2 rifles locked on them, the captains had their Beretta M9 sidearms aimed at them, and Yugito and Fu had their Colt M14A1 Sopmod rifles also trained in on each one of them as well. For a second everyone was as still as statues, neither one wanting to throw the first blow. The tension in the room was thick as many of the shinobi and civilian side were sweating slightly, anxious about the possible battle that could occur. Each cage knew that despite their speed, only the Raikage would have a chance, and that was if he could use his Raiden no Yoroi in time before a bullet hit him first. Uzukage Dono, please, there's no need to go to such extreme measures, we will give you Uzushiogakure, we give you our word, Tsunade managed to say, hoping to avoid a bloodbath. For another minute everyone was still until eventually Naruto spoke. Very well then, from now on Uzushiogakure is under the control of the UWN. Any further refusals similar to Tsuchikage Dono's will be treated as a threat and will be eliminated. Now then, let's get back to the issue at hand here, Naruto said as he holstered his weapon, along with everyone else, and retook his seat. The cages and other shinobi present let out a sigh of relief, which turned into a glare towards Aniki for almost causing the UWN to become an enemy. This was something they really, and emphasis on the really, didn't need right now. Once everyone was seated again, they heard a ringing sound coming from Naruto's helmet. Then they saw Naruto raise his right index and middle finger to his right ear and began to talk. Report. Authorization to engage Akatsuki member Deidara granted, Naruto said as the other occupants of the room jumped slightly at the order. Are you sure that was a wise idea, Uzukage-sama? Members of the Akatsuki are S rank each and would even give us cages a run for our money. How can your men, who can't even use chakra, defeat such an opponent? May questioned. Didn't Naruto just defeat some of Konoha's top ninja with only the basic equipment we give to our troops? Naruto's group thought. Although they said it mentally, Naruto coincidentally repeated it out loud. Mizukage Dono, yesterday I defeated the Konoha 11 with only standard military equipment and nothing else. What do you think my men can do when they have access to better equipment and have numbers on their side, especially since my soldiers have a sense of teamwork and comradeship that dwarfs Konoha's by miles? What do you think their odds really are? Naruto rhetorically said as the cages and councils still did not look convinced, although Gaara looked like he was attempting to see the possibilities rather than blindly say no. Seeing that almost none of them were convinced, Naruto sighed and gave a bored look before reaching up to his hologram projector again. Watch and learn. CV-67, codenamed Baseplate. Orders for Mizukage-sama, permission to engage the enemy cleared. One of the sailors from the radio station informed the other occupants of the ship via radio communications. All right, Sergeant Ito Akita replied as he ran a hand through his snow-white hair. He stood at roughly 6, had blue eyes and had a scar that run down from his left eyebrow to his left cheek. His duty was to command the ships and other vehicles in the absence of his captain, Sakamoto Kumamoto. Right now he was positioned next to the helmsman overlooking the ship from the bridge. His eyes had hardened when he got news of the Akatsuki member closing in from the long-range radar they used. Taking the pair of binoculars that were strung around his neck, he gazed over the water. Soon he spotted the Deidara on a bird made of clay flying towards baseplate at rather fast speeds with a maniacal smile on his face, and hands. Upon seeing the enemy, he dropped the binoculars to hang by the strings and picked up the intercom microphone. Man, the Sea Sparrow anti-aircraft missile launchers, the enemy is approaching from the northeast and from a distance of 2 kilometers. Javelin launchers will be in support, and I want Remington M700 snipers to target the Akatsuki member himself. The others will try to keep his explosives away from the ship, he blared out as the alarm sounded and the men started to run to their posts. Time to send these fuckers to the lowest depths of the sea. Deidara chuckled as he closed in on the aircraft carrier. For the moment he had met no resistance, but he had noticed that they were aware of him coming towards them, judging from the increase in activity and the sirens blaring. When he was close enough, he placed his hands into the bags that contained his explosive clay and had the mouths on his hands eat the clay. When he brought them back up, he opened his palms to see the mouths chewing on the clay still. The mouths then spat out the clay to reveal small clay birds. He grinned at them as he threw them on both sides of him. She won, he grinned as they then expanded until they were as big as the one he was standing on. The two birds then sped ahead of him, intent on causing damage to the huge metal ship. Fire Barrage 1. Deidara looked in shock as the Sea Sparrows launched a barrage of missiles, locked onto the two speeding birds. In a matter of seconds the missiles made contact, causing his clay birds to explode. This is going to be harder than I thought, Deidara inwardly said as he gathered more clay into his hands. This time creating 4 birds and did the same as before. Fire Barrage 2. Deidara predicted the missiles this time and guided all of his clay birds away from the missiles. He laughed when he saw them miss, but his eyes widened when he saw them following him. Shit, he cursed as he was forced to use evasive moves to fly around until eventually his clay birds were hit and exploded with smoke covering the area of impact. This led the terrorist bomber to go on the defensive. He would dodge left or right, avoiding the missiles at all cost. Then he flew across the deck hoping that he was too close for them to do anything. Bang. Gah, he yelled out as a bullet hit him square in the chest, the force of the impact causing him to fall and hit the deck with a thud, landing near the edge of the deck. When he sat upright he had to rub his eyes as his vision was blurry. Once his vision was clear he saw that he was surrounded by sailors, and, image-wise look on Google Images and type, as Navy sailor, and that they all had their Colt M16A2 rifles pointing at him. Target grounded and surrounded, sir, the sniper reported as he pulled the bolt back to his Remington, ejecting the empty cartridge onto the floor. He was at the front of the group soldiers paying close attention to the terrorist bomber's actions. Deidara observed his surroundings, noting the soldiers that were paying close attention to him. Overall I seem to be in some pretty deep shit now. I can only hope this works, he thought as he placed his hands into his bags of clay to perform his Kibakujirai. Bang bang. Only to be shot in both of his arms, making them useless to him. He growled at them as they slowly moved towards him, in the hopes of subduing him and interrogating him for information. Guess I have no choice, Deidara grinned, causing the soldiers to pause, wondering what he was going to do next. The man then opened the mouth located on his chest. Seals then started to spread over his body and he began to become transparent. He laughed crazily at the thought of the destruction he would cause by using the suicide technique. Art is an explosion, cat bang. Deidara wasn't given the chance to finish the jutsu as a bullet was now planted in his head, courtesy of the Remington sniper. Target killed, Sergeant, he said into his radio. Roger that, take the body to the morgue for observation, Ito replied as the soldiers confirmed their orders before taking Deidara's body away. Konoha. After the commotion on the ship finished, the hologram projector was turned off. When this was done everyone, minus Naruto's group, were stupefied at the display of power. Looking around, Naruto saw the expressions of the cages and heard Kurama laugh in his mind. Shaking his head mentally at the kitsune, he turned his attention back to the shocked cages. As you can see, despite my nation's inability to use chakra, we can still hold our own against both Otogakure and the Akatsuki. Now can we move on with these talks? Naruto irritably said as the cages woke up from their shock and continued on with the talks. 3 hours later, after constantly debating between both sides, they eventually came to an agreement, though not everyone was happy about it. The UWN will ally with Shinobi Alliance against Otogakure and the Akatsuki. To help prevent the loss of life, the UWN will provide medical assistance, under strict guidelines, and the Shinobi Alliance will do the same with the UWN. Other than that, the UWN will only take orders from their own forces, unless authorized by their captains or generals. There will be no trespassing from either side and only the leaders of either side will be allowed in each other's territory. This is the pact agreed upon, and so I conclude this meeting, Mifune stated as he looked around to everyone, though some reluctantly nod their heads. The ninja were in full agreement, the civilians were less than pleased because of their lack of gain, and Danzo and the elders were fuming at the result. They were about to object but were beaten to by a certain blonde Uzukage. Before we all retire, I have two more issues that need to be addressed, or to be more specific, issues concerning Konoha, Naruto said, getting the attention of everyone in the room. And what would those be? Uzukage Dono, Tsunade asked, hoping it wasn't something big. Her hopes went unanswered, the crime committed by one Danzo Shimura and the retirement of the Uzumaki clan symbol from Konoha. This caused both the shinobi and the civilian side of the council to start denying, for different reasons. The civilians because Danzo bribed them to support him, and the shinobi because of their attachment to the symbol. You can't do that, we have full rights to use that symbol. It's been with Konoha since its founding. To remove it would be to remove a piece of ourselves, Suminazuka, Kiba's mother, pleaded. This was the thought that had been shared with the other Konoha shinobi. It was a very important part of their history, and many people saw it as a symbol of strength. The other cages, seeing that this was only related to Konoha, decided it was best to leave. Naruto saw this but didn't stop them, as he saw no reason to keep them here. Looking back to the Inuzuka, he frowned. I can and I will. Mito Uzumaki made Konoha promise one thing, to raise a Jinchuriki with love. This was so that whenever they had to face the Kyuubi, their love would overrule the Kyuubi's hate. You failed in that request. When my mother came to Konoha in the hopes of gaining allies so that she could claim her homeland back, you refused and abandoned the Uzumaki to save yourselves. When I was in Konoha, I was beaten by Konoha civilians and shinobi alike on my birthdays. My blood was spilt on a symbol by people who adore it yet spit on the clan who owns it. Konoha's academy doesn't even mention that the symbol they wear with pride is owned by the clan they betrayed, and instead proclaims it as their own. The Uzumaki clan account was completely drained after the Kyuubi's attack, to be used as either repairs or compensation, when there was clearly an Uzumaki, namely me, alive and had full rights to the account. I myself was ridiculed, and many people, both civilian and shinobi alike, have said how worthless my clan was. Now you say that I have no right to the symbol. Who the hell are you to say that, you kami damned hypocrites? Naruto finished yelling as the shinobi in the room could only look down in shame at the harsh truth. Calming himself down, Naruto then glared at the council with hatred. I expect the symbol to be removed within the next week. Anybody who is caught by my men wearing that symbol without my permission will be arrested and will face a court-martial. The Konoha residents raise an eyebrow, or trial. Naruto deadpanned as the shinobi nodded in silence, though the civilians didn't react at all since they never saw any real value in the symbol. Very well, Uzukage Dono. Now can we move on to the case of Danzo's crime? Tsunade said glumly. Yes, I too would like to know what I have done wrong, said Man asked. Throughout the whole meeting he had said nothing, as he was planning on using his Nei shinobi to steal the UWN secrets. Naruto pulled out a book that read Konoha Law Book. The book contained every single law that was still in effect today. It was maroon leathered hardback, and the title was written in golden letters. The size of the book was the same as Jiraiya's ICHA books. I read this over a few times and noticed something that was still in effect. Opening parenthesis. Clears his throat. When a shinobi is exiled, banished, she will be given a seal that will temporarily seal away her ability to use hand seals unless released by the Hokage. From here, Danzo has broken this law, as he didn't apply a seal that would temporarily seal my ability to use hand seals, but permanently. Therefore he will be punished, Naruto recited as Tsunade clenched her hands into fists and grit her teeth in anger. Danzo, you're under arrest and will face trial for breaking the law, Tsunade ordered as two Anbu appeared behind the man to arrest him. However, as they touched him, he disappeared in a puff of smoke, signifying that he was just a clone. Damn that fool. Anbu, alert all Chunin and Jonin shinobi that Danzo Shimura is to be arrested for using an unauthorized seal. He is to be captured alive, and also inform the genin of his status, but they are ordered to only look out for him. If they do spot him, they are to inform either a Chunin, Jonin or Anbu of his location. Dismissed, Tsunade ordered as the Anbu rushed to try and apprehend the elder. During all of this, Naruto was looking rather down, as this would mean more fighting for his men, since now they would also be facing not just Akatsuki and Otogakure, but also Danzo and his Nei organization. To sum it up, he had to face 3 enemies now, 4 if you include the Shinobi Alliance as a potential enemy. Once the atmosphere had calmed down once again, Naruto stood up to conclude the meeting. Now that has been solved, I would like to give some warnings about our agreement. The medics and doctors who will help you with using our medicine will be in charge of any patient that requires their medication. This is because without the help of chakra we cannot afford to make mistakes. Too much of certain medication will kill the patient or make them even more sick, and too little will only achieve in suppressing the ailment, not cure it. Also, any misuse of our medical equipment will be in breach of our pact, and in turn it will be void. In addition, my medics and doctors have taken an oath that they will help anybody who is in need of help, be it ally or enemy, so if you see my medical forces healing an enemy ninja, do not try to intervene. Doing so will also be breaking our pact. Finally, be aware that anyone who trespasses on the UWN's territory will be under our jurisdiction, not the Shinobi Alliance. Repeat this to the others and make sure they understand that they are on very thin ice. They slip up even once and we will no longer be allies, and all that we have contributed to the war will be taken back, Naruto said with finality as he and his group saluted everyone present before marching out of the room through the double doors, leaving a stone council and cage behind. Well, this is going to be troublesome, Shikamaru yawned out. Too right, friend. It'll be hard enough to convince everyone to take off the symbol, add in the other requirements, and it sure isn't going to be pretty, Choji Akamichi said in response to his close friend. Yeah, I sure will get an earful out of my clan, especially Ino. I love my daughter very much, but she does yell a lot when things don't go her way. I can't help but think that maybe I shouldn't have treated her like a princess and instead taught her some humility at the time. Sure, she has matured a lot since her academy and genin days, but she still has the tendency revert back to them when in the company of family, Inoichi Yamanaka added as he massaged his temples when he imagined the commotion he was going to get at home. Ino would have been present as the clan head, but after training herself to exhaustion to suppress the guilt that swelled up after seeing Naruto, took a toll on her and she was currently in the hospital recovering. Many of the other clan heads were nodding in agreement, though the civilians and elders were still plotting ways to gain something out of the agreement. I need to speak with Naruto at some point. If only so that I can try and make it up to him, Tsunade thought as she dismissed the council, stood up and walked out of the room towards her office to finish her paperwork and get drunk with alcohol. Meanwhile with Naruto. Hey there, stud. A pair of arms wrapped around Naruto's waist from behind as Anko leaned into his back and placed her mouth near his left ear. Anko-chan, Naruto replied as he gave her a grin in return. Before any of them could continue, they heard some clicking noises coming from the group behind them. Turning to look at them, they saw each of the bodyguards aiming their rifles at Anko whilst the others were tense and had their hands on their weapons, ready to be drawn at a moment's notice. Smiling, Naruto waved them off, telling them that it was okay. It's all right, men. She's an ally here, he said as the group relaxed, but Yugito and Fu were still glaring the duo, silently saying, explain. Upon seeing those looks, Naruto mentally sweated and he could swear he heard Kurama laughing in the back of his mind. Taking Anko off of him, he saw his two wives walk up to him before stopping in front of him, arms crossed. Naruto-kun, is there something you want to tell us? Fu asked with sarcasm intoned in her voice. Will you see why, Yugito-chan, F Fu-chan? Yes, Naruto-kun, Yugito added as she tapped her foot in irritation. Naruto gulped as he realized he couldn't screw up now. You see, I was wondering if it would be okay to date Anko here with your permission, Naruto quickly said, closing his eyes and making a pained expression in preparation for the incoming feminine fury. When he didn't feel anything, he opened his eyes to see the odd sight of both of his wives whispering to each other. Their expressions were hard to denote, so he just stood there, waiting for the decision of what they were talking about to be made. After a minute or two, they stopped communicating and gave a look towards their husband that made him confused as they looked slightly happy. We'll let you date Anko here on the condition that you treat us fairly. This also includes anyone extra you wish to date and we must approve of them. Luckily we don't have any problems with Anko here, so don't worry about her. With others we may outright say no, or we may want to give them a test to see if they're worthy enough, Yugito declared, with Fu nodding to emphasize the point. Oh okay, he was able to stammer out before sighing in relief and turning to Anko. Well, that settles it, Anko-chan. I'll take you out to a restaurant at say 8 p.m., Naruto offered. Anko nodded vigorously before giving him a quick peck on the lips before waving goodbye and heading to her apartment, which she shared with Kurenai. See you then, stud. After the woman had got some distance, Naruto heard some whiplash sounds being made from behind him. Turning, he saw his captains snickering, his wives with smirks, and their bodyguards' postures were shaking, trying to rein in their laughter. Come on, he huffed and carried on walking to the hospital to check on Ayame. The snickering of his soldiers and the giggling of his wives following close behind him. Time skip, Konoha Hospital reception. As the group entered the hospital, Naruto saw Inoue arguing with the head doctor. He along with the others raised an eyebrow in confusion. What's going on? Kit, something is telling me this isn't going to end well. That seems to be happening all right, Naruto thought as he continued to watch one of his captains argue with the head doctor. You know, Kit, I have been wondering why that Senju isn't in charge of the hospital. Given it's her speciality, Kurama asked his host. It's because she's the Hokage. She can give new techniques to the hospital, but she can't have full control over how it's run. This is due to the fact that Tsunade only has control over the shinobi of Konoha, and since this hospital also takes in civilians, the control of the hospital was given to someone the council and Hokage agreed on was best suited. The problem here though is that during the time period between the Sandame's death and the Godaime's inauguration, the council had full control over Konoha. So they appointed someone who didn't like me in an effort to kill me through negligence in my medical care. The shinobi side didn't want this but couldn't since they were outvoted by both the civilian council and the elders at the time. The person appointed also can't be removed unless 3/4 of the entire government agree, though given how it's only half and half I'm not surprised nothing has changed, Naruto explained to his tenant. Soon the argument stopped. Inoue sighed in what could only be defeat before conversing in more quiet tones. They eventually finished and the head doctor walked away to what could only be seen as his office. Inoue then spotted them and hurried to report to her superior. Uzukage-sama, she saluted, prompting everyone, minus Naruto and his wives, to salute in return. Report. Physical wounds are minor, cuts, scratches and bruises. All have been treated and so she is physically fit to leave. However, mentally I can't say the same. She is scared of all men except you and her father. She will recover, but I fear that it will never permanently go away, so in the future I would suggest keeping men from getting too close to her and that you or her father stays close to her. Now normally we would transfer this kind of patient to a recovery room where she can get therapy to help her deal with the event, however apparently here it's a different story. All they treat are physical wounds and injuries. This is why I was arguing with the head doctor. He said that because physically she can leave that they will discharge her without treating the emotional wounds. I argued no, but he wouldn't have it and gave me an ultimatum: either she leaves within 24 hours or they force her out. Inoue finished grimly as she saw the anger coming from her comrades. No worries, Inoue-san. Contact Toichi Ichiraku and tell him to come to the hospital. He will help move Ayame to the helicopters where we will arrange for them to move back to the UWN. You may find him at the Huey's now, Naruto ordered as she saluted, took the 2 bodyguards she had with her and walked out of the hospital. Alright, let's check on Ayame. Then we'll go back to the hotel. You're all free to do as you wish from there on, Naruto said as he walked towards Ayame's room. The group followed him, each cursing the incompetent hospital staff. When they were close to the girl's room, Naruto raised his right hand, telling his group to stop. A few seconds passed before all 3 generals tensed, causing the others to tense as well. I've detected 3 people inside Ayame's room that shouldn't be there. Yugito, Fu and I will take care of them. In the meantime I want everyone else to head back to the Hueys and await further orders. Be prepared for a fight. Sir, yes sir, his group replied, turning and leaving the trio alone in the corridor. Let's go, Yugito and Fu nodded, looking just as serious as their husband. The 3 stacked up on either side of the door, Naruto on the left-hand side with Fu next to him and Yugito on the opposite side of the door. All right, we have a civilian hostage inside on the bed. With her are 3 ninjas who should not be there. Yugito-chan will breach the door. I will enter first with Yugito-chan following and then Fu-chan following her. Rules of engagement, hostage priority. Kill all enemies, but Ayame's protection comes first, Naruto ordered. Yugito and Fu nodded as all 3 pulled out their Colt M4A1 rifles and cocked both weapons in preparations. Naruto then raised his right hand and proceeded to count down from 5 by reducing the number of fingers he had raised. Point 5, point 4, point 3, point 2, point 1. .0. As soon as he reached 0, Yugito slid the door quickly open, drawing the attention of the shinobi inside the room, each wearing the attire of Otogakure. They were arranged so that one was hovering over the bed with a kunai, one was near the window and the final one was near the door. And, the room itself, imagine looking through the doorway. The bed is attached to the wall on the right and the window is directly opposite the door. Swinging himself through the door, Naruto fired a shot at the man over the bed, hitting him dead in the head. The force of the impact causing the man to fall backwards to the floor with blood spraying out of his forehead, the man's face in a state of shock. Immediately the one nearest the door lunged at Naruto with kunai in hand as well, whilst the other ninja ran for the window. Before the ninja could strike, he too was shot, but this time in the chest from Yugito as the man fell forward on the ground, blood pooling around his form. The third assailant jumped out of the window and it looked like he was going to make it to the roof opposite. Boom. Until he was blown to pieces from a shot fired from Fu's grenade launcher, causing blood to splash onto the hospital. The commotion made the civilians panic whilst the ninja went to investigate. Oto Nin, why am I not surprised? Naruto asked rhetorically as he scanned Ayame and found nothing wrong with her. He then checked the status of the two Oto Nin. The one near the bed was obviously dead unless the man could survive having metal forcibly pushed into his brain. He then heard a groan come from the second man and quickly rushed to him. What are your orders here in Konoha? Tell me now and I will relieve you of the pain, Naruto demanded coldly. We were, sent to kill, all of the weakest, people who, were precious to, you and frame Konoha, Afterwards we were, to meet with 20 others, in the market square at, midnight. Now please, save me, the man said as his vision blurred. Naruto stood up and pointed his rifle at the man's head. His eyes widened and he tried to struggle but froze when he heard Naruto speak. I said I would relieve you of the pain. I didn't say I would save your life. Naruto then pulled the trigger, ending his life knowing he had been tricked. It was then that the cages appeared in room. Looking around they saw the two corpses and had noticed the bloodstains on the hospital walls outside. What the hell happened here? Tsunade bellowed as the three generals turned their attention to the blonde Hokage. Oto Nin. 3 of them. I killed the one near the bed, Yugito-chan killed the one near the door and Fu-chan killed the one that jumped out the window. Their orders were to kill all those who were weak but precious to me. Then they would meet up with 20 others in the market square at midnight, Naruto recounted as cages looked at each other in shock that many Oto Nin could so easily get into Konoha. Well, we need to plan. You will not plan anything, Naruto interrupted Tsunade without even looking at her. The reactions this got were mainly the cages looking at Tsunade intently, wondering what her reaction was. What do you mean we won't plan anything? Tsunade demanded, angry at the prospect that they would allow Orochimaru's forces just strut about in her village. I didn't say I wouldn't plan anything, I said you wouldn't. These ninja were under orders to hurt those who are close to me and were too weak to defend themselves. I want to send a message to both Orochimaru and Akatsuki that basically says, fuck with me and I fuck you over tenfold. Now you can either sit back and watch or do whatever, but do not under any circumstances interfere. Do so and you will be punished for obstructing an operation, Naruto said with finality as the cages scowled but didn't say anything. Good, now this is what I plan to do. Time skip, 8 p.m. Anko and Kurenai's apartment. Coming, Kurenai shouted as she heard a knock on their door. Opening it she saw Naruto standing outside in a tuxedo, but instead of the normal bow tie it had a straight black tie. She couldn't help but blush lightly as she took in his form as the getup was a bit tight, showing an outline of his muscled body. When Naruto saw the blush he grinned before looking in the apartment for Anko. Ahem, I believe that Anko-chan and I have a date, so could you please call her down please, he asked. Kurenai could only nod dumbly before calling out to Anko without taking her eyes off the blonde. That you Naruto-kun, he heard reply from upstairs. Yeah, I have a great idea for a restaurant. Okay, I'm coming down now. Soon Anko came down the stairs. Wearing a purple dress that reached to her shins. It was held up by one strap on her right shoulder and had a slit up the right side. Her hair was down from its usually pineapple ponytail and she had a single golden earring pierced on her left ear. Wow, Naruto sighed out, getting a blush from the woman in question. Holding her head up high she strode to man and interlocked her right arm with his left. Thanks Naruto-kun. Now Kurenai-chan, I'll be back at 11 p.m, see you later, Anko said as waved to her friend goodbye and started to walk through the streets, her date right next to her. When they had gone round the corner Kurenai closed the door to the apartment and went to bed, deciding to get some sleep though her dreams were about the blonde man she had seen a moment ago. Time skip, Golden Leaf. Wow, you're taking me here. This is the top restaurant in Konoha. I sure hope they do dango though, Anko finished in a disappointed tone, thinking if her favorite food would not be served here since it wasn't known to be a very fancy food. Naruto chuckled at his date's prediction. Dango would always be her one weakness when it came to things that weren't ninja related and to him it was one of the cutest things about her. Yugito had a similar thing for fish and he always enjoyed the pouch she would pull when she couldn't have any. Seems good so far, he thought as they approached the entrance to the Golden Leaf. The waitress was waiting near the entrance, which upon recognizing her caused Naruto to grin. Table for 2 sir, the waitress asked with a knowing smirk. Yes madam. Could we have the VIP table please? Certainly sir. Please follow me, the waitress then pulled out 2 menus and led to duo past the astonished looks being sent their way by the other patrons. The looks though were soon replaced with negative sneers, glares or other kinds of looks that could be associated with dissatisfaction. They ignored the looks though Anko had stiffened slightly before Naruto assured her nothing would happen. After they had taken their seats the waitress asked what they would be having. I think I will have the yakizakana with a side order of miso soup and I would like some of your best sake available, Naruto said as the waitress then turned towards Anko, who ordered the yakisoba with a side order of dango and also sake. After the waitress took their orders, she retrieved the menus and went to the kitchen to pass on the order, leaving the two to talk for a little while. So what's the final conclusion on the negotiations? Anko asked. Neutral with benefits. We will provide medical assistance throughout the war and will fight the enemy, but that is all we are doing. If a team of shinobi are under attack and my men are able to aid them, they do not have to help. They may help if given permission or if they can give a good reason to save them. Other than that, we are to stay out of each other's way. If a ninja from the alliance commits a crime against us, then he will be under our jurisdiction. The reverse can be said if one of our soldiers commits a crime against the alliance. Not that that is likely to happen, hopefully. I mean, I would rather have my time spent trying to win this war and leave, rather than constantly having to punish people for crimes, Naruto replied with a tired look. Anko was about to ask another question but was interrupted by the arrival of their food. She decided then it was best to leave it at that and instead focus on having a good time. A couple of hours passed before the two finished, paid for their meals, Naruto paying for both at his insistence, and made their way back to Anko's shared apartment. I take this as goodbye then, Anko asked as she leaned her back against the door and crossed her arms, with a smirk adorning her face. Not forever. Just for a little while. After all, I need to start taking part in this war that my nation has been dragged into, but I promise to take you out again at some point. Who knows, you might as well invite Kurenai to come along next time, Naruto replied cheekily, adding a wink that caused Anko to blush at the implications. She then uncrossed her arms and turned around quickly to open the door. When she was in the doorway, she quickly spun round and gave Naruto a long kiss that initially shocked the blonde, though he promptly returned the kiss. After a moment the two separated, panting slightly. That was for luck and please be careful. You are so far the only one who hasn't wanted to date me just to get into my pants, and I don't know what I'll do if something bad happens to you, she said softly before closing the door, leaving Naruto outside contemplating on her words. I will be careful, he said to no one in particular, sighing at the end and running his right hand down his face. Have a nice evening, sir, he heard a voice say rhetorically. Looking to his right, he saw the waitress from before walk towards him, a smirk plastered on her face. It was okay. Anyway, are we ready for the operation, Captain Fujita? The woman's smirk widened as she pulled off her wig and took out her contact lenses. Yes, sir. Everything is ready. Naruto gave a smirk of his own as he tapped his right wrist with his left index and middle fingers. His clothes phased for a moment before they disappeared entirely, revealing his armor, weapons and trench coat. Then let's get going. Time skip, Konoha Market Square, 12 a.m. The place was a large open area and paved so that the merchants, both foreign and domestic, could sell their goods and services. Recently the place had been used by many spies in Konoha as the civilian council was able to pass a law that forbid ninja from patrolling the area as it scared the customers. Naturally Tsunade had been against the idea, as well as the clan heads, but once again they had been outvoted by the civilian council, the then still active Danzo and the village elders. Due to the lack of ninja around, many spies saw it as the best opportunity to report back to their superiors and were able to give them many secrets about Konoha that could have been prevented if the law hadn't been placed. It had also been used for the civilian council members and village elders to meet up with their less legal contractors. When Naruto planned out the operation, his briefing was interrupted by the civilians and elders barging in and telling him smugly that ninja were not allowed in the market square, hoping to keep him from discovering their illegal activities. In return he had grinned at them and replied, well, it's a good thing my subordinates are soldiers and not ninja. He then proceeded to turn his back to the group of stunned council members and elders. Realizing they had lost, they had harumphed and walked out of the briefing, many of the room's occupants snickering as they left. Presently the square was playing host to 20 Otogakure ninja who were tasked with finding and eliminating any defenseless supporters of the UWN, then kill the UWN group's leader. It was a fairly easy task to find the supporters and only had to send 3 ninja to deal with them, but so far no word had been sent back about their status. This caused the OTO nin to be tense and nervous for the time being. Everything ready? Yes, General Uzumaki. Good. Now let's begin Operation Pest Extermination. Sir, yes sir. At that moment all of the OTO nin were blinded by spotlights that had been placed up on all of the buildings. The light exposed the OTO nin, taking away their cover of darkness. In addition, it kept Naruto's own men hidden from view as the lights kept the OTO nin from finding them. OTO nin, you have tried to hurt people who are close to me, and for that your lives are forfeit. Any last words? Naruto shouted. He stood up on the roof of one of the buildings staring impassively at the Oto Nin below him in an at ease stance. The Oto Nin were startled by the voice and desperately tried to locate the voice but couldn't due to the intense light. Everywhere they looked was covered in white, some trying to cover their eyes so that they didn't go blind. Who are you? Show yourself. Those were some of the outbursts that the more hardened ninja could give, though the rest were trembling, shaking, in fear and started increasing their efforts to locate the man who they were ordered to kill. It was then that they noticed that a shadow had been cast over them from somebody standing in front of one of the spotlights. Up on one of the roofs stood Naruto in full combat gear and trench coat, though his arms weren't in the sleeves. His posture was one of aggressiveness, his left hand fingering his sword attached to his left side, and a glare that if looks could kill would have already sent the Oto Nin 6 feet under. When all of the Oto Nin recognized the man as their target, 5 of them transformed into Zetsu clones and launched themselves at the blonde standing before them with a war cry. Despite the imminent danger, Naruto made no motion to move or give any orders. In fact, he seemed to not even be looking at the clones that were getting closer to him by the second. 10 meters. 6 meters. 4 meters. 2 meters. ... Bang, 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 bang. Naruto sidestepped the now corpses that flew past him and landed in heap behind him, each with a bullet implanted in their skulls. The shooters were Chaitak intervention-wielding snipers, all 5 of them firing their shots in synchronization. After the shots rang out, many of the windows were opened to reveal soldiers carrying Colt M16A2 rifles and taking aim at the, now surrounded, Oto Nin. The rooftops around the square also became populated with soldiers rushing out and taking positions for battle, but this time with a mixture of M249 saw-light machine guns and M32 multiple grenade launchers. Seeing that the Oto Nin were trapped, Naruto decided to give them one last talk before continuing. When you put on that Oto hit I-8, you signed a silent contract to serve your nation and leader. That leader has sent you here on a mission that was almost guaranteed death. Die knowing that you failed a mission for a bunch of lunatics. Naruto then turned around and walked away from the slaughter that was to occur. As soon as Naruto had finished speaking, all of the soldiers opened fire. The riflemen, machine gunners and grenade launchers obliterating the Oto Nin. Some were hit multiple times, some were hit only once, and some were blown to oblivion. Any ninja that made it to the edge of the square were picked off by the snipers. The shots also caused many small lights that would allow one to see the battle from far away and was accompanied by the screaming of the dying men and women. By the end of the massacre, it had started raining, making the square run with blood covering it almost entirely. Corpses and body parts littered the ground with the heads in a permanent look of pain and fear. Craters both large and small caused by multiple explosions and bullets were made in the ground. The Cages and Mifune stared at the scene in horror and glanced at the Uzukage to see not a single ounce of regret on the man's face. To them it was one of the most terrible things they had seen, just beating the shinobi wars. Why didn't you spare any of them? They would have had information that we could have used, Aniki said. Naruto looked at the Tsuchikage but noticed that he wasn't looking at him. Following the man's gaze, he saw that he was still looking over the square where the battle had commenced. Both Akatsuki and Orochimaru never give vital information to these kinds of subordinates. They would have likely only have known their mission details and nothing more. Plus, remember the reason for why I did this with only my soldiers. Fuck with me and I fuck you tenfold. I meant what I said. This was an example, he replied nonchalantly, though the Cages and Mifune turned to look at him in shock. What do you mean, said an example? We're the only ones who witnessed this, Tsunade cried out, wondering what happened to the boy who tried to avoid killing when it wasn't necessary. His response was to look at a tree in the far distance. Following his gaze, they froze when they caught a brief look at the dark half of Zetsu as he melded into the tree and disappeared. That was why, and don't go thinking about capturing him now. That man is a prodigy when it comes to getting out of situations. The best way to deal with him will be to bait him to an area where chakra is cut off, then take him. For now though, I will be returning to my transports to go back to headquarters. I will also be having Toichi and Ayame Ichiraku accompanying me, as the two would like to move and gain citizenship to the UWN. Can I trust you, Tsunade Dono, to make sure the civilian council don't try to use your ninja to forcibly take them back? Naruto asked the Hokage. Tsunade nodded, though, as she was still trying to imagine the orange ball of sunshine that convinced her to become Hokage in the first place. What happened to you, Naruto? Seeing this, Naruto shook his head and left the leaders of the Shinobi Alliance to talk amongst themselves. Meanwhile, so the Jinchuriki is more tenacious than before. This throws a rather large wrench into my plans. I need those 3 Biju for my Tasuki no Mi Kikaku to come to fruition. Zetsu, keep an eye on them and obtain any information that catches your attention, Madara said as Zetsu nodded and melded into the floor. Once he was gone, Madara turned towards Orochimaru. Have your men prepared for any assault that the UWN or the Alliance may have planned for use. Of course, Orochimaru then walked out of the cave planning on adding capturing Sasuke to the orders in order to gain the Sharingan. Madara then turned to his last subordinate. Sasori, how have the development of those weapons been? Not well, Madara-sama. The materials we have here just aren't strong enough to handle the strain. Take this for example, the puppet user then pulled out a brown bess musket. Creating a Dodan cage bunchen, he handed it the musket and ordered it to load and fire it. The clone took a long time in a vulnerable position to load the weapon, and firing it caused Madara to drop the idea. The clone had been killed as the weapon exploded upon being fired, blasting the clone in fire and splinters. Yes, it would appear that this contraption will be of no use to us. Throw it away and continue to prepare to leave at a moment's notice. Sasori nodded and left his leader to gather supplies and upgrade his existing puppets. Once he was gone, Madara let out a sigh he didn't know he had been holding. This is becoming more and more difficult. At this rate, my plan won't work. I need more allies. Perhaps I can help you with that. When he heard that voice, Madara sighed again and looked towards the newcomer. And why, pray tell, should I listen to you? The figure took a step forward, revealing to be the recently declared traitor, Danzo. Because I know all of Konoha's current secrets and plans. You've got my attention.